like I said, the reason why we wanted to hit record and to start having a conversation, because I've always gotten the impression that you are not holding on to information. I think the reason why that we get what the response that we get from the pod and the webinars and stuff like that is because Jason and I decided just to give information away as much as possible to help as many nonprofits as we possibly could. And this has been a really good vessel. But I was speaking to your prowess in the space and how I always appreciated and respected the fact that I thought you were the same and you were ahead of the curve and always just putting information out there to help folks. You know what I mean? So,
Well, thank you. Look, I realized a long time ago when I started my own business and when I went out on my own that the customer I was trying to serve was the nonprofit development director, executive director. And a lot of
yeah,
auctioneers don't love the fact that I just like give away all this information and I don't hang
yeah,
out in the auctioneer world.
yeah,
I call myself like a renegade auctioneer because I'm like so out in the middle of nowhere by myself
for
doing my
sure.
own thing.
For
But
sure.
the
Yeah,
whole goal of my life, like my passion is fundraising. And if you can't
yeah,
afford me or I'm too busy, why shouldn't I help you? Like, why not?
yeah,
I want to help
yeah,
as many nonprofits as possible. That's my goal.
You just said
yeah. So you have
something
different
that's
ways to go about
yeah,
that.
you
For
just
sure.
said something
Yeah,
that I'm the same thing because I was a charity auctioneer for 30 years, but it wasn't my only game. I came out of the telecom industry, so I'm an entrepreneur and had all this stuff going on the side. And this was kind of like something I did in my community on the side. When I said, okay, when I sold my company and I said, I'm going to do this, I just want to give everything away. And Trevor and I, we really, it wasn't just kind of happen. I mean, we specifically said, we're going to give everything away. And you mentioned that like
Absolutely.
auctioneers, like they walk around holding this really tight, like, well, if you hire me as a consultant and I'll do all this,
yeah,
and I'm like, "Golly, man, you're missing out. If you just tell
yeah.
if you just tell everybody what you're doing, you become the expert, they're still gonna hire you. Because who do I wanna have come?
Well,
I want the expert."
Yeah.
So I appreciate that
well,
about
and it's
you, and that's why
also
when we started, I said I'm a fan because I've
Yeah.
watched many of your videos, and that's what you did. You just gave it all away.
Yeah, I love that.
well, the other thing is how much information do you retain from videos you watch anyway? And
Yeah.
so part of it is I try to give you as much information as I can, hoping that if you hire me, we'll work on it more detailed to your cause, but you may have to watch that video like 10 times to figure
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
how it actually works. So yes,
I
I,
think
I
that's
love
awesome.
helping nonprofits. I am a big old fundraising nerd. There is nothing I love more than sitting on Zoom with my clients and being like, what about this? What
Yeah.
about if we try this? Like
Yeah.
I work a lot with private schools and this is a
Yeah.
Jewish school. I happen to be Jewish. And I was like, what if we make a dance party fun to need? What if we get everyone on the floor? We have everyone have paddles and we do it to like the beat of a song. And he was like, that
Uh-huh.
might work because their crowd loves to drink and
Mhm.
party. And I was like, well, let's like lean into that. So there's nothing I love more than talking about fundraising and helping people raise money.
I love it.
So
I love the creative approach that you've always had. I know it's yeah, and that's yours and you own it and I really, really like it. But we met in what 2016, 2017,
Oh, I
and
know
you were in
exactly when we met.
California. Yeah, and then you recently moved in the last couple of years to Florida. But how long have you been fundraising?
So I worked for a nonprofit for 5 years prior to becoming a auctioneer. And I
Okay.
also, in my personal life, I sit on the board of a couple nonprofits. So I
Okay.
donate myself, I donate my time, and then I also fundraise. Like peer to
Yeah.
peer, person to person. So I've been in the game since I was 26, so 15 years.
Cool.
that's
Awesome.
awesome.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, I was just curious. That's awesome.
So Abra
Jason, I interrupted you.
No,
Did
no,
you have a
no,
question?
this is just so Aubrey, you being an auctioneer, everybody thinks, "Oh, you just get up on stage and, talk fast or slow or do whatever it is that you do." And so why don't you tell us about how much more there is and one of, some of the things that you spend most of your time with nonprofits, a client that you would spend the most of your time doing?
Absolutely. I am a big proponent of starting early, but also understanding that the gala process for most nonprofits, not all, for most nonprofits is part of their year-long cycle of fundraising. So,
Mhm.
for most nonprofits, they have an annual campaign, they will have a major gifts campaign, and then they'll have their gala. So, for many of the people at the gala, it will be a secondary sometimes even a tertiary, which means third, a third
Yeah.
gift for them in that giving cycle to that specific organization. So when I work with organizations, we work on how does this fit within your fundraising cycle in general. We work a lot on language. I'm a big proponent of language. We talk about, I am slightly anal, but not to a fault. I believe everything has to be thought of and planned out ahead of time. And so we spend a lot of time playing with the timeline, with the show flow, talking about unique and interesting ways to fundraise, to look at things. And then a lot of the first thing I do, the number one thing I do before I even take a client is I request your data from past years. And I look at, I don't care if it's a spreadsheet, I don't care if you use any kind of app or mobile bidding to store your data,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter to me. I want
Yeah.
to see it. And I typically cannot make any decisions without looking at the data first. And so that's how I will start with my clients.
I
Good,
love that.
good. What's the typical process that you try to be engaged with before an event?
Before an event, you mean like the
Like
night
time,
of,
yeah.
or
No,
you
no, no,
mean
no, no.
like
Like the
how far
time.
out?
No, like the time. Like, you typically, this is kind of where I want to be. Like some people are saying, 60, 90, 180 days, whatever it may be. Whenever I first started, I pretty much, they'd call me and I'd say, okay, I'll see you the night. No, 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 I know when to be there. And I would show up and away we'd go. But that's been a long time ago when it was a lot different. And there wasn't very many events as there is now. So talk about that. Like how much time do you try to be with your client to get that done to make sure that you get them on track?
So typically my clients book me 9 months out. That is
Hmm.
particular to me. I
Mm.
think if I was starting an auction business today, I would not use that same model. But part of it is me personally. I need every minute detail ironed out, and I
Hmm.
cannot get on that stage personally. I know lots of auctioneers who are just like, oh, we can have one call, boop, 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 and I'll see you tomorrow. I can't do that. It
Yeah.
is not in
Yeah.
my DNA. I cannot do that. So I work with
Yeah.
my clients 9 months out. We have a call every 2 weeks. It is a standing call. It's about 45 minutes long. And I put together an agenda for each and every call about what I want to talk through, work through, and go over. And then as we move forward, we work on things like, this is going to come across as very controlling, but I like to provide a lot of
Hmm.
service to my nonprofit. So
Sure.
I'll put all their silent auction bids. I'll make sure I know where they start. I know how much they go up.
Mhm.
I want to make the timeline. I want to help rate the speeches. I want to make sure there's this beautiful transition from a speaker or a video into the paddle raise. So it's kind of all over the board. You name it.
Mhm.
Sometimes I
Yeah.
come into boards and I tell them, here's the 4 things you have to do the night of. Pick three.
Yeah.
Like it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
am
love
very hands on.
Biggest
I
mistake
love
you see nonprofits that maybe, once you get in there that they've been making that have limited their fundraising? You got two or three that you go, wow, these are the top three things that I always really currently.
Currently.
Currently,
Yeah.
the biggest mistake I see, a lot of them are around data. I'm a big old nerd. Number one is not sending out a survey after your event and then guessing how you think people enjoyed it, or just talking to 3 board members and being like, no one liked this auctioneer, but you don't actually know. That's not actually the truth. So, sending out a survey, it doesn't have to be long, like 10 questions max. Again, using data on the front end to decide what you're going to do, looking at your funding need levels, looking at your auction items, what items sold well, what didn't. And I am not the auctioneer who tells you, you must have 2 dinners, you must have 2 trips, blah, blah, blah. I think some schools want all sports. And I think
Sure.
some organizations want all theater. And I don't think that that's a problem. So putting
Yeah.
together the right packages, I think pigeonholing yourself, which what you think people should do. And then I think the third biggest problem is using your fundraiser, your gala, as a way to close gifts instead of bring in new gifts. And a gift is a donation. But a lot of
Mhm.
organizations think, I know, let's get a lot of donations in one night. And then we don't have to call everybody
Yeah.
on the phone or take them out to lunch. Let's have a gala. But I think the best thing you
Right.
can use the gala for is to bring in new people. Because otherwise, what's the point of throwing a
I
party?
agree.
People
I
Woo!
really
already like
agree.
you. What's the point?
I think that
Yeah.
is so good.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
that. We love
You know,
that.
you
Well, we're seeing
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to touch on the survey because that's something that
Mm.
we've not ever really spent any time. And I think when you say like 10 questions, kind of go through that just a little bit whenever you try to help somebody. Saying if they've
Absolutely.
never done a survey, here are the things that you need to talk about or look at.
Absolutely. So there are free survey softwares out there. The
Hmm.
one I tell my clients to use because it's quick and easy is just like Google Questionnaire, I think it's called. You can just make a
Okay.
bunch of questions. And the big data points that I want to know is I want to know about timing. Did you think it was too long or too short or just right? Did you make a donation? If yes, Why? If no, why? Like, I want to know, did we
Yeah.
not move you? Did you think it was
Yeah.
boring? I was drinking, I was playing bingo, whatever it might be. And then the other thing I want to know is, why did you come? Like, did you come because someone invited you and they bought your
Yeah.
ticket? Or did you come because you saw it on Eventbrite and you thought it would be a fun night out? Because, and this
Yeah.
is, Jason, goes beyond your question. The bigger question that or another mistake I see nonprofits making is they don't this is mean, but I do it anyway. I think nonprofits should have a varsity and a junior varsity invite list. And the only way you get on the varsity list is if you've made a donation. Why keep
Yeah.
inviting
It's
these
stupidity.
people to fill your
Yeah.
seats if they don't donate? What are we doing? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So I like to send
Yeah.
out two batches, not me, but my clients. We send out two batches of invitations, our varsity invite list and
Mhm.
our junior varsity. And
I love it.
our goal is to fill every single seat with the varsity people.
Yeah.
And you can
Love
get
it.
on the varsity team. I know there's going to be a
Mhm.
lot of people saying, "How do I get on the varsity team?"
Yeah.
Well, you someone can bring you, but
Yeah.
everyone knows you go to a fundraiser to make a donation. And if you don't know that, you are making a huge mistake in filling up a
Yeah.
seat of someone else who could be there.
I was just having this
Preach.
conversation with somebody the other day, and there was an organization that I helped, and I actually was a board member. I was a board member, committee member, wrote checks, did the auction, and it went from having the varsity group to where basically they just kept getting more people, and it was like, next thing you know, they've got 700 people in the room, and nobody had any money, and I'm like, why are
Yeah.
you inviting these people? And you go through, and it was like they forgot what they were there for. And this is years
Yeah.
whenever
Absolutely.
I wasn't involved, and they forgot why they were there, and I think it's really imperative at a nonprofit. This is a fundraiser, not just a
Mhm.
fun night out. Now we want to make it a fun
Yeah.
night out. We want to do all those things as you said. What's some of the have you had some people that the first time they do a survey they're really surprised and that the
Yep.
results of the survey are significantly different than what their perception was?
Absolutely. So this is going to go back a few years, but when Trevor first called me, I think it was 2016 or 17,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was not yet HGA fundraising. It was just
Mhm.
whatever it was before,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
My favorite way to use one of those trips, because they had a very decent price point,
Yeah.
was to use them as a prize for completing a survey.
Oh, that's really good.
Mm.
That's a good idea.
Because filling out a survey takes time,
Hmm.
but people are very surprised at what they learn from the majority. And I think in nonprofits, we have this problem where we only talk to the people who are involved. We only talk to the committee and we only talk to the board, and they all pat
Hmm.
themselves on the back and go, "Oh, it was so
Yeah.
amazing." But the
Yeah.
truth is, the people who sat in the back, who nobody talked to and nobody engaged them, and they were bored and they didn't feel like they engaged, like, we need to hear from them too.
That's
Hmm.
where the gold lies. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so people, you can learn a lot from a survey. I don't like to ask about food because who cares? It's not what we're there for,
Yeah.
but I think you have to
Yeah.
ask about the experience. Did you buy silent? Did you buy live? Did you participate in a raffle? How else would you like to participate financially? And then
Yeah.
lastly, do you want to be involved next year? Do you want to be on our
Yeah.
committee?
Yeah.
That should be your final question.
That's great.
Do you recommend to your clients getting in the weeds a little bit here? Not a right. There's no right or wrong answer. Do you recommend that they reach out and thank these attendees first, or send the survey, or some combination thereof? Because you're very detail driven. Do you have an order of operations for folks?
So I don't, but I
Yeah,
am.
just curious. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't, but I
Yeah.
think that every single person who donated, no matter
Dollar amount or
the
whatever.
dollar amount, should
Yeah.
get a phone call and a handwritten note. I am
God bless.
done with the email and I am done with the standard thank you letter. I get
God bless
so
you.
many of those
Good.
and they're so
Yeah.
not personal. I want a personalized one. And by the way, ChatGPT, which is free, can write you 15,000 versions of the same thank you note. You could just cut and
Tons.
paste, but it has to be, I don't want to get the same letter I got last year. That makes
Yeah.
Yep.
me feel like
Smart.
garbage.
Yeah.
Yep. I hope people heard that.
What do you,
That's
so I
really
had
good.
an organization, and so kind of and I want to get your just feedback on this, because the same thing, we even coach people to have planned gratitude. You have to plan your thank
Mhm.
yous out and do it. So my whole thing is, if they get, depends on the number. If you're at this level, you get a call from the CEO. If you're at this level,
Mhm.
you get a call from the board president. If you get this one, it's from this board, where that way they know. But it doesn't matter if you gave $100 and one of the board members, you're on the call list, because when you look at the numbers, it's not like if you've got 600 people, you didn't get 600 donations. That's not what you're going to see. But you break that out and they make the phone call and you get a call going, "Hey, Trevor, hey, just want to thank you so much for being at our gala and thank you so much for attending." It
Massive.
is
Yeah, massive.
I think we miss, to your point, the power of what that is. And that's just a way to do it. And to say, if you're on the board goes, well, I don't need, can we have some, because boards tend to think, well, don't we have staff to do that? It's like, no, this
Yeah.
is your job.
That's what you're there for. I had a fascinating conversation recently with a company specifically working with nonprofits, and they provide custom designed handwritten notes that can be integrated into their CRM that I thought was really, really, really cool. And he had all sorts of data about some of the biggest complaints by donors. I just didn't feel like I didn't feel like obviously I was thanked enough or the graciousness wasn't there. And I think that we have a lack or we're bereft of that in our world right now, because not to say people are inherently bad, because I actually feel like people are inherently good. However, I think that we're so self-absorbed right now, and there's our attention is being bought and sold and displaced in so many ways that we automatically just think no news is good news. Oh, they know I appreciate them, or they know that that I'm thankful and I'm gracious in nature, because that's the kind of natured good person that I am. But we're missing it. We're missing
Yeah.
it, and
Absolutely.
nonprofits are missing it in a paramount that they change their approach in this thankfulness and this
Well,
gratitude and
the number one
graciousness.
thing nonprofits do is they'll, and I see this, they'll send out a thank you letter, and then at the bottom, and they'll put a donation envelope in with the
Yeah,
deal.
it'll have
Yeah.
a pre-stamped
So,
envelope for the next check or what
hey,
have you,
Abra,
which drives us nuts.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
change back and get back to the fundraising. So, you've got a lot of experience, been doing this for a long time. What do you see? And I'm gonna just say technology because technology is significant. But what do you see as the biggest change or one of the biggest thing, the trend in successful fundraising from 15 years ago to now?
That's a great question. I think
The big thing.
I don't think there's actually that much that is different. I think one of the biggest things that was around 15 years ago, but it was not so prominent, was the rise of the fund need. I think that's probably the biggest proponent. But everyone's trying to like always come up with new ideas to fundraise better.
Sure.
I was trained by this old school guy named Mort, and he was my mentor in fundraising when I worked for a nonprofit. And fundraising really has not changed. It's one person asking another person to join them in making a donation. And I think that's really important. But I think there's a piece there that is missed, which is join them. So, number one, the person asking should have already made a donation. Like, I don't believe in putting anyone on the stage who hasn't donated $1. I think that's bizarre. We're trying to highlight people who fundraise. The only thing that I think has made a big difference to nonprofits is fundraising technology, which I think is good for nonprofit professionals because it's easier on the back end to enter data.
Mhm.
But in my opinion, and I have a lot of renegade opinions, I don't believe it's more powerful than a traditional standard funding need paddle raise with paper. So my
Yeah.
answer to your question is not that much has changed, except that more people are doing paddle raises, more people are using technology to store their data, which I like. But
Hmm.
at its core, I think fundraising will always be the same.
Well, talk
People
about
driven.
the paddle raise because
Yeah.
it's, I go back 30 years and there was no, we didn't do that. You got up, had some stuff, you auctioned it off, and everybody said goodnight. And then all of a sudden, it starts up. And I remember the first time I did it, and it was just a total left out field, just kind of a wild try.
Yeah.
And everybody was very receptive to it because we were able to qualify what it was that they were raising money for, and like I said, it wasn't like this was pre-planned out. It just kind of happened. But talk about you seeing that evolution of the paddle raise and how that's changed fundraising and how nonprofits are making more money with it.
So there
Yeah.
used to be at a lot of nonprofit dinners, there would be this pass the envelope method. And that I believe was
Ooh.
the origination
Yeah.
of the paddle raise. It would someone would get on stage, they would make a pitch, and then someone who would be pre-assigned at your table would pull out this giant envelope, and inside the giant envelope would be lots of different envelopes. And they would say, Abra, here's your envelope, Trevor, here's your envelope, Jason, here's yours. Pass out pencils, you fill it out, you turn it back in. And
Hmm.
that
Sounds
was
like
like
kite.
the origination of the paddle
Right.
raise.
Hmm.
Yep.
The paddle raise, I think, is gaining a lot of traction and a lot of force. And I don't know if this is answering your question, because I think nonprofit employees, the number one thing you hear from them over and over and over again is how stretched thin they are. And
Hmm.
galas are extremely time
They're
consuming.
very difficult.
And the
Yeah.
Hmm.
paddle raise is the best bang for your buck in terms of staff time
Oh,
commitment.
yeah.
And I
True.
think that is the number one reason why nonprofits like it so much. It is also, in my opinion, the best bang for your buck at a gala. You only have like 2 or 3 hours of people's attention. So,
Mhm.
how do we use 15, 20 minutes to make the most amount of money from the most amount of people in the room? I think the
Love that.
other piece that is added to this, I won't say missing, is that the middle class in America, who really is the bread and butter of like 85% of auctions in the United States, they are at the church fundraisers, the crab feeds. It's not all like the billionaires. They now have they did have the fungible income to pretty much take
Yeah.
any kind of vacation they wanted. And so it used to be before the internet to go and get Italian villa was
Yeah,
impossible. But
yeah.
now to get an Italian villa is much easier with apps like Airbnb, and VRBO. What is more difficult to do is have a seamless vacation. And I think that's like why companies like you exist,
Mhm.
because to do all the research is exhaustive.
Mhm.
I tell most of my clients that in 3 to 5 years, if we are still working together, which I have a hard and fast rule, you cannot hire me for more than 5 years in a row. At the start of the third year, we have to start cutting down your live auction. Usually we do it the second year. And eventually by the fifth year, this is for some nonprofits, not all, we do away with their live auction completely
Mhm.
for certain size nonprofits. This is not for all nonprofits. It's for, and I specialize personally in nonprofits trying to go above $250,000 and typically double that and get to the next level.
Mhm.
Right.
Most organizations will still have a live auction, but they should
Yeah.
have a live auction that is right for their audience and they should not be ashamed of it. And so if that
Good
means
call.
8 different trips, sell 8 different trips. And if that means 8 different golf outings, sell 8 different golf outings. I don't
Yeah.
think you
Yeah.
need to have a variety.
There is no one size fits all or broad stroke for anyone because they're all so disparate. Yeah. So
Absolutely. And
absolutely,
that's
and
also
they're all
why,
they're in different parts of their journey, their fundraising
absolutely.
journey. Yeah.
And that's where data comes in too. I'm not going to look at a client like I had a client who raised, I want to say, I think they raised $1 million in their life. I would never get rid of that life. I would never get rid of that
Oh,
life.
yeah.
No, totally. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there are
Yeah.
certain instances where they have auction items that don't sell well. It's not a fun part of the evening. It's
No.
boring and
Yeah.
we got to cut it down from like 8 to like maybe 6 or 5.
That's natural attrition. We're seeing that. We work with organizations where they're like hard and fast. Yeah, 6 max. They used to be 12. Now they're 6. We still work with organizations that wouldn't even, and not disparaging the theory and the strategy and the efficacy of it. We work with big organizations that would never even consider a fund a need. A lot of
Sure.
them are very membership driven, and they have 40 live auction items. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, and talking them out of that would be completely futile. You know, as far as time is concerned, because they're all just come in
Mhm.
such different shapes and
Yeah.
sizes, like people. They're entities. You know
Well,
what I
that's why you
mean?
have
So
to find the right auctioneer for you. You don't know how
totally.
many
Yeah,
clients I say, "I'm not right for you. I'm just not the right
I love
auctioneer.
that.
Not your girl. Sorry."
Well,
Yeah.
you,
Well,
you've always been
I
unabashed
used to say
about it,
12 to
and I
15
appreciate
items, and then it kinda
that.
got to 10 to 12, and, it's kind of 8 to 6 because of the time, because
Yeah,
everything's so fast
exactly.
and you've only got so much
Yeah.
time. One thing I wanna just mention about auction items, and I wanna get your feedback on it and see if your perception is the same thing. One of the thing
Oh, I think we have the same question.
whenever one of the things I talk to people about, I said, they go, "Well, we're not really sure about the auction." I said, "I can't get the top, they're not bidding on anything. We just can't get them engaged because you don't have anything they want. You made the point.
Yeah,
They can get any vacation they want to. So
yeah, they have
unless
access.
if that's
Yeah,
really what you're trying to drive, it's got to be something pretty spectacular. It's got to
yeah,
be it's a private jet to Opus One in Napa, that's going to be a deal for this, this, and this. And you've got somebody with a jet and somebody, and then it brings, 60 to $100,000 or whatever it's going to do because
yeah,
that's what they want because there's nothing else they need.
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. It's got to blow their hair back.
So you're
Yeah,
you're kind of on that, like, who are your donors that you're trying to do the live auction for? Because I think that the live auction is for the very tip top. If I mean, we do things where you want to be able to
the
touch
varsity
everybody
player.
because that's why we do other strategies like Caribbean Craze. And I'm not here to talk about our stuff. What I want to do is just to see because I like this information that you're seeing and things that you're seeing as well.
Well, I think the hottest thing in terms of live auction that I'm seeing, so yes, the live auction is for the tip top. It's for the same 10 to 20 people every single year
Yeah,
who buy
Yeah.
whatever it
yeah,
is. But that's because
You
they
called
love
them the
you.
varsity.
yeah,
You called them the varsity. Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's like that's the major varsity. That's who gets on the court. I am seeing, I call them syndicate items. I kind of made this up, but it's not a made up item. I didn't invent this at all. Again, I deal with a lot of private schools. They have these sign up parties. So we just put a sign up party in a live with a premium, but it worked and a sign up party for anyone who's listening is like Trevor hosts a barbecue in his backyard and he's going to open 10 bottles of 95 point wine and he's going to sell seats at his
Smart.
table and he can sell 20 seats for $300 each. So it's a different way to get different people involved in the live auction because the same people bid every year and people like to raise their paddle.
Yeah.
So I like
Love
to
that.
come up with unique ways. What can we sell seats to? So I'll tell you, for my clients, I've sold like a storytelling event at a school. We sold 100
Cool.
seats for $200. It was in their theater,
Awesome.
like a storytelling event.
Yeah.
I've done a
Good.
pottery one, even like a luxury box. You have a luxury box to whatever sports team, sell each seat. Because guess what? Most wives don't want to go. Just the men want to go. So just send
Yeah.
20 men who like football. It's a different way to make money. I would say that's the thing that I see the most. But
Love
I,
it.
again,
We
use
ca-
the data.
we use the term buy-in, but it's exactly the same thing. I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great.
It's exactly the same.
Love it. Yep.
But
Love it.
again, you have to know what your audience wants. And most nonprofits are
Don't have a
chicken to
clue.
ask their big donors what they want this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they think it's too risky or, oh my goodness, we're really putting our necks out on the line. And it's
I
actually
always
not.
call. I give
Yeah.
good phone. I always say, give me that phone number and I'll ask him. And I'll say, here's
Yeah.
the 3 items. Which one do you think sounds best to you that you'd bid on?
That's good.
Perfect. Good.
Yeah.
Abra, I've got
Phone.
a closing because I want to come back to this fund and need thing, and I want to hear. I've got two
Yeah.
questions in it. One, what are the ways that you tell your clients or anybody listening that these are the things that you need to do to have a successful fund to need, paddle raise, whatever you want to call it?
Ooh, good question.
Great question. I have 2 YouTube videos about this. I'm going to have to remember
Okay.
exactly what is on it. I will
Okay.
tell you the steps that I take. Number 1, you have to identify a speaker. Number 2, you have to work with that speaker to make sure that speaker says what you want them to say, because
Okay.
I've seen way too many speakers get up there and go off topic and mess it up. Number 3, your auctioneer, whoever it should be, whoever it is, should know what you do, and not only what you do, but why it's important. Because it's one thing to just get up there and say, do it for the kids, but that doesn't really hit home with donors. You have to have, I think, I call it the fund to need transition, which goes from the speaker to the direct ask for money. Number 5, well, maybe I can do these all. You have to set your levels. And
Yep.
number 6, you have to have a predetermined donor at your top level. I go high to low, people go low to high. I do not think there is a hard and fast way to do it. I think as long as you want to try it, start there. Number 7, there has to be some kind of pressure and momentum in the room. So there has to be pressure from the people at your table, pressure from the auctioneer, and pressure from the organization.
Good.
And then you need momentum, like one gift should get off another gift, should pop off another gift. And by gift, I mean a paddle raise.
Good.
And then 8, there has to be a lot of gratitude in the room. There should be a lot of thank yous. And I think that if you bought the table and somebody at your table, like I host the table, and Trevor and Jason raised their paddles and they're sitting at my table, I should get up, shake their hand, look them in the eyeballs and say, thank you so much for donating to this cause. It means so much to me. You'd be surprised how many people like sit there, mute people who are like, I'm
Yeah.
afraid to tell my friends thank you, and I'm afraid I had to tell them I want them to donate.
Mhm.
And then
Good.
number 9, which I probably should ask in the video, is you have to make sure people know where their money went during the year.
Yeah.
You have to say, like, thank you for a gift of $500. We bought
Yep.
7 new iPads for our school,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
7 new desks, or whatever. It doesn't matter.
What you're doing. Yep.
Okay, well, you
Yep.
kind of answered.
That's
You
good.
kind of answered it, and this is
Oh, I love that.
and this is really just this is about the professional auctioneer. You know, whoever you hire, because everybody's a little different. But what is your deal?
Absolutely.
Will you ask? Will you ever step out there and ask for anything more than what you know that you've got committed?
Ugh, no. I
You know, it's
I
okay.
won't.
There's not a
And I'll
right or
tell you
wrong.
why.
Put her on
I
the
used
spot.
to.
I-
I used to.
Yeah.
I used to.
Yeah.
And I would hit maybe like 40% of the time.
Yeah.
But the 60% of the time that it didn't work, I realized that I believe this is very Californian of me. I don't live there anymore. I believe in these like invisible vibes in the room
Mhm.
during the fund
Yeah.
and need. Like I believe
Yeah.
there's momentum and pressure and energy.
You're not wrong. Yeah, you're not
But
wrong.
when I believe that for me in the fund and need that I perform, when I start out with an ask and the ask is not responded to, it is not answered to, it messes up the vibe, the energy, and the momentum. And I am not willing to make that sacrifice. What I will do, and I will tell anybody who wants to know this, it's not a trick, is I will start lower than I know I have my first gift.
Sure.
And then I'll ask, but I don't consider that the same thing because I know it's in my back pocket.
Yeah.
Like if I know I have a 15, I'll say I'm going to start at 10 and then ask for 15
Mhm.
and magically it happens. But it's not the same thing as just asking straight up.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
that.
that's really, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's kind of like, well, where do you do? Do you do the auction and then the fund to need, then the auction? And everybody always has a deal about that. I don't think there's a right, wrong, tried and true. I think it's back to the audience, the event, and what you've got going
Yeah.
on,
And those
Absolutely.
and to
surveys.
be adaptable. Because
But I
thing,
won't do it in the middle. I hate the
Okay.
middle. I
no,
hate the I
I wouldn't
never
First,
either.
do
first and
that.
Yeah,
last.
I
Yep.
think because
Yep.
they're two different things. Okay,
Yep.
so
Yep.
I think this is. I want to bring this up. We're wrapping up here, but you brought up something really, because I had a situation one time several years ago where I had really helped this organization grow to a certain point, and I mean it was the first time we did an auction, it was me and three other guys, and we were all bidding each other up because this is how small it was when it stopped, and then it got to be significantly larger over time. But we did, and the president said, "Hey, I'm going to do the funding." They'd never done one. Well, I just said, "We're going to do this." Well, later on, he said, We're going to do this," and this is what my point's going to be about having a professional auctioneer like Abra to do this, is because you start thinking, well, if we're just going to do a fund to need, I don't think we need to hire somebody. Let me tell you exactly why you need to do this. We get up there, I do the auction, rocked it. It was really good. Hand him over there. He's not a professional auctioneer. He's not used to being on stage, but his heart was in the right place. I want you to know
Mhm.
his absolute heart and intent was in the right place. And what he wanted to do, he said, my wife and I, we've come together, and what we're going to do is we're going to give $1,000, and we'd like to really have some other people come with us and see how many we can get here tonight. A guy in the back stands up and goes, "Charlie and Patty, we'll give $10,000 for these kids." And he froze and he stopped.
Sure.
And then he continued with his speech. Had he captured that deal and been, I know what you would have done, Abra. What would you have done in that situation if you had the microphone and somebody said, "I'll give $10,000"?
I would have jumped off the stage, ran to the back, and had a little celebration in the back with that person.
And then you'd have said, the next thing you'd said, "Who else is going to go here with Charlie and going to
Yeah.
bring it on the
Who else
deal?"
is with
Because
you?
I personally know
Yeah.
there were 5 other people that if they'd have asked, they would have raised their hand. Because one
Yeah.
of them came up to me after and he goes, "I think they cost him some money because if he had asked me, I'd have given more."
100%.
And my point to that
Yeah.
is there comes this thing about being ready for that, because you don't hire, the professional for all the stuff that goes right. You hire the professional so that way they know what to do when something happens and off, and they're able to deal with that. I think a
Mhm.
big part of
Absolutely.
the insurance.
And
That's
I
your
also
Yeah.
think that most people assume our job is very easy.
they do.
And it's not.
Sure.
It's just a good auctioneer makes it look easy. You don't wanna
Hmm.
see us up sweating up there, freaked out, "Oh my gosh, no one's bidding."
Yeah,
Right? That's
Yeah.
part of
yeah,
the entertainment and part of the show. There are plenty of people who wanna go the volunteer route, and to be honest, that is why their auction cannot get over a hump. They
yeah.
just can't reach the next level because oftentimes they are too close to it and they don't know what exists out there in the world. And if you have the right auctioneer, an auctioneer who's willing to suggest things to you, I over suggest. Like there's
Yeah.
a lot of different ways you can do your fund and need. There's a lot of different ways you can make it work. You could do the paddle pickup, you could use technology, you can use paper. One of the biggest organizations in LA, they pass the microphone. How much do you want
Yeah.
to donate, Jason? I'm donating $10,000. And they just pass the
Yeah.
microphone
Love
around,
that.
they raise
Love
$35
that.
million. Right? There's lots of different ways, and a good auctioneer will help you find the best way for your nonprofit to
Yeah.
raise the right amount of money.
Well,
Yeah.
Abra, how can
Yeah.
we get a hold of you?
We need to, how can folks find you?
Well, you
Because
can
it
look
seems
me
like
up.
you're a good person. You're a good person to know.
I am a good person to know. I'm on YouTube. You can just look up
Yep.
Abra, ABRA Auctioneer, and you can find me on there. You can
Okay.
find me on my website,
Great.
auctionsgenerosity.com, or you could just Google Abra the Auctioneer, and I also come up. But I only take 40 events a year. My business
Select.
style is very hands on, so I cannot do a lot of events
Yeah.
a year.
And you have a family and
Do
you have
you?
a
I
personal
know
life.
you're in Florida. What part of Florida are you in?
I am in Boca Raton, so I
Boca
serve
Raton.
Palm
Yeah,
Beach
yeah.
and
So
Broward.
Oh,
cool, cool.
awesome.
Abra, can't thank you
Awesome.
enough for coming and share some
Yeah.
time. So much good stuff.
Appreciate you spending so much
Yeah,
time with us.
folks.
Yeah,
If
Abra, you remember when we first met, and I just wanted to say thank you. I picked up the phone, I thought of Abra, and I said, "Hey, come on our podcast." And she got back to me the same day and said, "Yes." And a week later, here she is. So I can't thank you enough for always being so kind to us and helping
Absolutely.
us. It means a
Mhm.
lot, and I know that's how you are with all your clients as well. So I wanted you to know that I always appreciate you very much.
for all of you listening, if you
Absolutely. My
could
pleasure.
if for all of you
Yeah.
listening, if you got anything good out of this today, having this time with Abra, please do this. Give us a rating and subscribe. It helps push it up so that way it gets out to more people. Also, most importantly, if you know a nonprofit professional that's out there, share this with them. We just really want to get this
Yeah.
information out to everybody across the country so that way they can learn how to raise more money.
Wait, can I
Awesome.
add one more
You
thing?
can.
Yeah, please do.
If you don't know how to subscribe to a podcast, all you have to do is ask Siri to do it for you. You can just say, "Hey Siri, subscribe me to the Hey Nonprofits Raise More Money podcast," and Siri will do it for you.
That's awesome. I love
Didn't know
that.
that. So
Thanks,
she's
Abra.
just full of gems today.
Well, you are a pioneer in
Yeah.
this space, and I really, really appreciate it. So thankful to have you on. Thanks for spending so much time with us, Abra. I know the audience got a lot out of it too, so thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you love our podcast, click the download button, rate us, and follow us on social media at HGA Fundraising. Get out there, start fundraising, and raise more money. See you next time.